Thanks for coming out. I don't like the monologues, so you guys have any questions?
Tim, could you just kind of take us through the process of landing IO and how that all came together?
Sure. I think we have a real puncher's chance to win a championship. We're looking for a certain type of players, a versatility, guys who can play both ends. Io's having a career year. I'm very familiar with Io and what he brings, not just on the court, but in the locker room. He's one of the guys we're really focused on throughout the trade deadline. You're balancing all these calls, and 99% don't materialize. Both teams kind of the needs of the teams presently kind of met up. I think he's going to make a huge contribution. His career high shooting. Really love how much he pushes the pace. He's a downhill guy. And again, culturally, both Io and Julian, I think, are guys that can exist on both ends of the court, and we're super excited.
There was a ton of speculation about being involved in Giannis and talking about. What can you say about how that went and how those talks went? And
I didn't know that was the thing. No. And as I'm talking, I think I broke my toe. If anyone's concerned, that's not a joke. I think I have a broken toe. Look, I'm not going to comment on any players, but our job always is to get better. We don't ever want to be static. We've had the last years have been very successful, but it's ended with 4-1 loss in the Western Conference Finals. So how do we continue to mature as a team? And how do we keep pushing the envelope? That locker room thinks they can win a championship. So anytime there's an elite player, without mentioning names, we're going to do our due diligence. And as you know, John, you've been doing it forever. You make 6,000 calls and 5,999 go nowhere. But we'll continue to be aggressive and try to find ways to improve this team until we can reach our ultimate goal.
The two-way aspect of IO, like how intriguing was that? Just knowing that you could use more of those all the time, especially in the playoffs. And it's like a guy like that who you maybe doesn't have a ton of playoff experience, but you could project to be successful there. Like how much were you looking for that?
Yeah, it's it's certainly they're different players, but we saw the role Nikhil played so perfectly last couple of years, and he's having a career year in Atlanta. It's so much fun to watch, his progression down there. But I think the ability to play a lot of positions around Anthony in particular. Anthony's such a ball-centric guy, and there's going to be so much responsibility on his plate. And in Chicago, he's played on the ball, off the ball. He's played the three. I think his flexibility really gives us a lot of optionality. And I think the more kind of multi-position players you have around a superstar like Ant, I think Io is going to have a lot of fun playing with a rim protector like Rudy. He's maybe going to be able to take some chances and get into the ball a bit more. So we're super excited about both guys, and we think they'll fit in seamlessly.
Tim, in regard to Rob Dillingham, obviously it didn't work out here. Was there any moment that led you to feel comfortable with parting ways with him, and why do you feel like maybe it didn't work out?
Yeah, no, Rob's a great kid with an unbelievable work ethic and super talented. At times it's challenging to have two agendas to develop and try to win at the highest level. I have no doubt Rob's going to be great in Chicago. Know the coaches very well, know the front office very well. The best thing that's going to help Rob develop is playing time. And it's not right or wrong of how things happen, I think, but you have to be honest with the situation presently. And for both Rob and Leonard, Leonard's done everything right. Killed the G League. As you guys who know him, he could not be a better kid, worked his butt off, and he just hasn't had a lot of time to get out there and play. So sometimes I think you have to look, what are we trying to accomplish in the next 30 games plus? What's best for these two great kids who've done everything right, everything we've asked them to do, they've done. And sometimes this kind of stars align. I think it's a great opportunity for those guys. Chicago got wonderful people and really good players, and I think as they play more and more, it'll be evident their skill level. And then we got specifically in Io a guy that we've seen some of our struggles off the bench, and he just checks so many boxes on both ends.
Tim, your other trade you made was navigating the aprons, and that's something you've had to be doing here the past couple of seasons. But what is this? Just as I think the first season we asked you about, the new collective bargaining and the cap, you're like, this is going to be something we're testing out year over year, learning. What have you learned about navigating how the salary cap is set up, and how did it contribute to the way that you guys pursued this deadline?
Well, a couple of things. I think the real challenge is the aprons. If you have aggressive and willing owners, and we have aggressive and willing owners. So, we were lucky enough to have ownership that said, hey, don't worry about the tax line. Let's be aggressive, make our team better. I don't want to be flippant about money, but it gets really challenging transactionally to get in these first and second aprons. We saw that last year. So I think, you have to be fiscally responsible. You have to be aware, not just this year, but you have to be aware of repeater tax and avoid the first and second apron. But we saw so many cash deals this year where, they won't call it a hard cap, but it's pretty close to a hard cap. But again, we were just fortunate that we were able to be aggressive. Ownership was all in with, let's make the team better, and we worry about finances afterwards. So it's a new day. I think it's going to put increasing pressure to have depth and increasing pressure to identify these kind of overachieving guys. But I think we're getting a little better at navigating it. But this one was wild because for one day it was like we were just in the financial service industry. Like it was all about money, 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 money. There's a lot of really good players who've been traded and cut. So there was a lot more this year than last year, but I think everyone's slowly adjusting to the new market.
And then you have open roster spots. Do you envision more to come here?
Yeah, we're going to have a couple of faces. I mean, we can go at 13 for a couple of weeks. We want the carnage of yesterday to settle and see who's out there and who's not out there. We have a couple of guys in mind. I think we have, we are going to, potentially see some familiar faces. The goal is it's really a sprint. The All-Star game used to be kind of the center of the season, middle of the season, excuse me. And now after tonight we have 29 games. So it's, we're very, very excited about where we are. I think the Western Conference is starting to see some separation in the top 7. And we know how important all these games are. So we just want guys here that are all about winning. And, we'll see what the next couple of weeks look like.
I can see why you're excited about the breadth of Io's skills. In particular, one of the things that you guys have kind of lacked is somebody with a really good handle coming off the bench and being a floor general in that sense. He's a jack of all trades in many respects. What things do you think you can count on him as a master of? And ball handling probably isn't one of them, is it?
I think he's a ball handler. I don't think, he's Bob Cousy, like a straight one. I think there's very few pure ones anymore. I think a lot of it's due to how we develop these guys, quite frankly. You're a pure one oftentimes if you can't shoot, which is rough. He's played on every position. I think he's very confident with the ball. I think he can handle versus pressure. Again, it's not Bob Cousy. It's not Magic Johnson. But the thing, we're excited about a million things, but I think a couple of things he's elite at. He's an elite shooter right now. He's having a career year. I was joking with one of our players that we have 2 of the top 10 shooters, and it's Jaden and Io. So I was kind of ribbing one of our other guys who thinks he's the best shooter. And he forces his teammates to play fast. He's a fantastic transition player. He's downhill all the time. On a made basket, he's flying up and down the court. And we've struggled at times to play with pace. I mean, we're pretty athletic, so I think pace is something that we're trying to lean into more. And the more guys you play fast, the more the other guys have to play fast. So we're really excited about that specific part of his game.
Io is a free agent after this season. Is it in your plans to try to keep him here long term? Is that kind of part of the thinking in making this deal?
Nope, no, of course. Yeah, I mean, you trade for a guy that's about everything we like, right? Worker, really, really bright guy, great teammate, well thought of throughout the whole organization, Chicago. A position of need, so we're certainly hopeful. It's a long-term match. He wasn't just identified for the next 30-plus games. He was identified because we think it's a guy that could be a huge part of our core, and he's a very good age fit and personality and game fit to what we presently have.
I was going to kind of ask you about that related to trading Rob and Leonard, and we've seen some of the young guys this year kind of struggle to gain traction. When you have a competing team and you're trying to incorporate young guys, late teens, early 20s, just kind of how hard is it to match those timelines up, so to speak, when it comes to developing young guys, but while still trying to get deep into the playoffs and make a title run? Yeah,
it's hard. It's not an easy task for specifically the coaches, right? Every game, especially in the Western Conference, every game is so meaningful. I mean, last year we finished the season 17-4, last 21, and if Harrison Barnes isn't that shot, we might be in the play-in, right? So it's not lost on organizationally how hard that is. I do think it's increasingly vital, though, with what we saw yesterday and how much money moved around. We have to be able to develop these guys. And we have developed a lot. We saw, Jaden and Nas were those young guys. So it gets more and more challenging when you don't come to a team where those available minutes are there. So it's a challenge, but I think it's something that it's a good challenge because it means you're a good team and it means your minutes are earned. And I think, again, for this portion of their career, Rob and Leonard in Chicago is going to give them tremendous opportunity to play more and to have kind of the ability to play through mistakes. It's part of the good problem because you're a good team. But we'll continue to try to find the right young guys and continue to try to win at the highest level.
Tim, in terms of the way that this week played out, did you make the Connelly trade to try to open up more flexibility and opportunity, whether it was for Io or a bigger fish out there, or was it more, let's just make this trade now, get under the apron, and then see what comes of it?
It was certainly, there was huge financial motivator there, and not just the money itself, but the more flexibility it allowed. We thought we were kind of early with that trade, and we communicate with Mike throughout the whole time. Hey, if this happens, it might look like this. That's, to me, it's wild how kind of sophomoric the market is at times. Everyone's waiting until the last day. And then it's impossible to talk to 29 teams in one day on the phone. So luckily, you can text some guys you can trust, but we didn't want to, you're talking a big trade here, you're talking a trade here. You didn't want to have all these balls in the air and with an inability to execute any of them. So we thought the earlier the better. And it allowed flexibility both financially and kind of transactionally.
Tim, I know they're not all created equal, so you can say some are valuable, some aren't. But just in general, how are second-round picks viewed as they're kind of tossed around in the league, and how do you view them as assets, and what is the value of them?
It's funny. This time of year, you don't think about them. Then on draft night, you're furious you don't have them. So we made some moves that, we're not going to worry about it. And, inevitably on draft night, the guy who we like is at 24. Now we're at 28, 29. So I think they're very important. That certainly they can materialize. Hey, we didn't get lucky in Denver, I wouldn't be sitting here right now without that second-round pick. So you don't want it to be dismissive of their value, but they're probably the easiest thing to recreate in the market, and they fly around so often. And we picked up a couple second rounds of the draft last year, and they just give you optionality. And then on draft night, it's obviously then you're putting a name to the pick, but prior to draft night, it's just the more kind of arrows in the quiver, the more effective you can potentially be.
Obviously, winning on the court's the most important thing. But Io and Julian both are up here talking about how they really take giving back to the community seriously, kind of high character guys. How much does that go into an evaluation, especially mid-season of this is going to be a high character guy that's going to fit?
Well, you're really lucky, and again, we got lucky in this trade. We studied Julian very closely at the draft. He was almost a Timberwolf. Knew his college coach well. He grew up in South Carolina with P.J. Dozier, an ex-Timberwolf, so you feel like you know him. Again, I got friends in Chicago, the coaching staff, the front office. I know how prominent Io's family is in Chicago and all the cool things they're doing on and off the court. So it's hugely important. It's like any other industry, whether you're writing for the paper or trying to win basketball games. It's not fun to be around jerks. And these guys are culture bringers, and they're super positive, and it just makes the day-to-day much more enjoyable because you can't control wins and losses, but you can kind of control who you bring in the room.